Okay, we are live on YouTube on channel 2 of the Architecture School YouTube channel, and I will give back the hosting to Anna or to Edson.
Probably to Edson.
Okay.
Probably to Edson.
Great, that's all. I will be signing off. Good luck.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What's going on?
We can't, doesn't seem like we can hear.
We can't hear?
And they can't hear.
Okay. Room microphone. Room microphone. Oh my God. There it is. Now there's. Oh no. Oh.
It reminded me of you. Yeah.
Check 1, 2.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's so nice.
Mic test. Hello, mic test.
Okay, I think we're good. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, no, that.
I'm about to shoot that, but not. We can hear you through the phone, AK, but not in YouTube. Can you speak in AK?
Yes. Can you hear me?
No.
Not yet.
No.
Give me a second.
Okay, one more time.
AK, can you try speaking?
Yep, can you hear me?
Yes.
That work?
Speak again.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay, great.
All right, I'll hang out for a second.
Thank you, Victor.
Welcome.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Jordan. Hi, Luis. Ellie. Hi, Judy. Can you hear me?
Hi, Ethan. Yeah,
Yes.
hear me.
We're gonna start in a minute. Let me just quickly check my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. We can start. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Edson Cabalfin. I'm a professor in the School of Architecture at Tulane University. And today we are having our final reviews for the Ecuador Design Research Studio. So first of all, I just want to thank our guests, Jordan Carubian. Hi there. Luis Carrasco, Elizabeth Vasquez, Eileen Blasco, Luis, Ellie, Eileen are in Ecuador, and Jordan, you're in New Orleans, I presume. And then we have Judy also online. And then let me start also just to share the screen to just introduce everyone. And then here on campus at Noki, I'd like to also then acknowledge our reviewers, Solis Vela, Emily Taylor Welty. We have Nick Jenish and Ann Yokim from the Small Center. And then we have Dean Iñaki Alday, all from Tulane School of Architecture. So let me just share my screen and then we will, I'll introduce the class. So thank you again for being here. And I'd like to welcome all of you to the Ecuador Research Studio, Sustainability in the Tropics for this semester, spring of 2023. And this class is part of the Sol A. Mintz Global Research Studio of the Tulane School of Architecture, who have generously funded the program. And this is one of the studios that is happening in the school this semester. And this project is a collaboration between FCAT, Fundación para la Conservación de los Andes Tropicales, the Albert and Tina Small Center of Collaborative Design, and then of course, Tulane School of Architecture. So just to set up that this studio asks the question, how might we design different possibilities for addressing FCAT Ecuador's needs in the present and the desire to grow in the future? ¿Cómo podríamos diseñar diferentes posibilidades para satisfacer las necesidades de FCAT Ecuador en el presente y el deseo de crecer en un futuro? So I will hand off the mic to Tom, who will begin our presentation. So also just as a reminder that we'll have our presentation and then we'll have an opportunity to ask questions and have a discussion after each of the group later on. And Tom will also explain that later. Yes. Place my face.
My name's Tom. Hello. Thank you for being here, both in person and thousands of miles away in Ecuador. This is our presentation of work from our Architecture Research Studio at Tulane University. The studio focused on sustainability in the tropics. We were lucky enough to work with some fantastic partners at FCAT, or in English, the Foundation for the Conservation of the Tropical Andes. There are 13 of us students in this course that you will be seeing work from today. Of the 13, 5 of us are graduate students and 8 are undergraduates. We all have various backgrounds and come from different parts of the country and world, but share a common love for design. Your professor is Dr. Edson Cabalthan, who has kept us on the right path since day one. We're going to record this now as well. This course is not a required course. In fact, some research studios in architecture school can be quite competitive to enroll in. The following are some of the many reasons we as individuals decided to enroll: to build a lasting relationship, to focus on sustainable building practices, to learn from our partner, to learn how architecture can fit into FCAT's larger mission, to be engaged in a hands-on studio, to learn about practices that can be applied to future projects in New Orleans, to learn about locally sourced materials, to further experience in designing tangible projects, and to increase knowledge and design of sustainable design and apply it to a meaningful real-world context. Here's the timeline of this research studio. This first row of this timeline describes the order of events that took place this semester and is also a direct reflection of the order of this presentation. For those that aren't familiar, research studios in architecture school are typically offered over several years. Each semester, the research studio is offered, new students enroll in the course and expand upon the work done by students in the previous semesters. This semester was the spring of 2023 and was the first semester that the studio was being offered. This coming fall, the studio will be offered again and new students will pick up where we left off. The studio will conclude with the spring semester of 2025. However, as I said, this is the very first semester it's being offered. Before any design decisions were made, crucial research was carried out by all students involved in the course. And I'm going to pass it off to William Trotter, who will tell you more about the research done and what we learned as a result of it.
Thank you very much, Tom. As he just mentioned, that detailed research would be an essential aspect of this studio to help us better contextualize who and what we are designing for. So round one of this research focused on gathering a deeper understanding of the country of Ecuador through multiple lenses, from history and policy to ecology and construction. Each topic was tackled by small groups of 2 to 4 students. Ecuador, located on the equator, neighbors Colombia and Peru, and has a generous coastline along the Pacific Ocean. It is a country with a deep and complex socio-political history, making concerted political action difficult. This is especially pertinent to Esmeralda's province, where tensions exist over preserving the important forest ecosystems that exist there. Similar to the US, Ecuador has 3 governmental branches: executive, judicial, and legislative. Though its major exports vary from various crops and to processed fish, Ecuador depends largely on its crude petroleum exports to supply its economy, which in turn can fluctuate wildly. Its geographic structure consists of 7 cantons, further divided into parroquias. Ecuador is home to some of the most biodiverse environments in the world. Esmeraldas alone hosts several different ecosystems, including mangrove, lower evergreen, and lower montane forests. Unfortunately, continued human activity centered around resource extraction has led to the destruction and deforestation of these incredibly unique regions. Ecuador's architectural history has been strongly influenced by the different periods of the country's history. Traditional building methods include the use of adobe, barraque, rammed earth, structural bamboo, and more recently, concrete. The country's modern style spanned from Latin American modernism to brutalism and parametricism. The second of the 2 research phases began to hone in on some of the topics that would be especially important to consider before moving into the design phase. This research focused on more human-oriented topics like decolonization, and public interest design, before narrowing the scope to investigate more architectural topics like materials and the principles of construction for the region. So we first looked at the idea of decolonization as it applies to our role of this project, which can be understood for this context as honoring indigenous practices, decentralizing Eurocentric ones, and creating non-hierarchical power structures. Next, we investigated public interest design. We gained some key insights about how to make our designs human-centric and specific to their users. We also learned some important information concerning the priorities of nonprofits and how good humanitarian design should advance the abilities of nonprofits by improving the existing spaces and facilities. We then dove deeper into specific construction methods and materials, as well as considerations for how we could implement them into our designs. Topics for investigation included structural bamboo, mycelium brick, barreque, and concrete, most of which made it into the resulting projects in some form. We also investigated the roles and goals of ecotourism, which helps raise sensitivity to host countries' political, environmental, and social climate. Engaging tourists with the region's natural beauty also means minimizing the impact the space is designed for them in the existing environment. Last, we researched some key principles of tropical and sustainable design. With Ecuador lying on the destructive plate boundary, it is especially important that our designs are equipped to hold steady in the event of an earthquake by using special reinforcement in base areas. In FCAT's climate, passive cooling strategies and means of rainwater management are also essential. I'm now going to hand over things over to Anna Catherine on Zoom, who will discuss some of our assumptions prior to our trip to Ecuador, as well as some key takeaways from our midterm proposals.
Thanks, William. The research was vital to our understanding of the site and prompted us with a few questions that led to our first design iterations. Before we visited Ecuador, we wondered about building materials, the rain and the mud, and what the topography was really like. We were also really lucky to have such amazing feedback from everyone at FCAT to help us through our design process. About halfway through the semester, our studio had 13 different proposals. After conversations we had while in Ecuador, we've been able to consolidate our design ideas into 4 projects. I'll present the midterm work to show a glimpse into our design process throughout the semester. So the housing group initially explored designs to house all different users, including FCATeros, students, and ecotourists. Each proposal occupied a different site on FCAT's grounds, from the bottom of the hill to the very top, even a series of buildings that expanded into the forest. Some provided a lot of privacy, while others had less privacy for more people. Each design carefully considered the topography and reacted to the environment thoughtfully and creatively. Next, we had a few new ideas for the commissary. One proposal focused on retrofitting the existing commissary and adding garden space adjacent to the kitchen, increasing functionality and structural stability. The second proposal relocated the commissary down the hill and converted the existing commissary into housing. This created campus zoning, where the upper campus is designated for sleeping and the lower campus supports gathering, eating, and socializing. The intent of the multipurpose classroom centered around spaces to be. This proposal focused on creating a flexible space that is open with potential for smaller private spaces to relax when not in a class, dining, sleeping, or conducting research. The new multipurpose classroom creates a new quadrant in connection with the existing commissary and bunkhouse. The main goals were to create a flexible space for meeting and relaxing, a dedicated lab space for local and visiting researchers. Finally, we have our field station designs. The original proposals were 3 different forms suited for 3 different users. One was a researcher, one an FCATero, and another the ecotourist. While there were specific amenities associated with each user, the main point of each field station was so that it could be a small, multifunctional unit that could be placed in many different site locations and even more remote ones.
So in response to the feedback on these proposals, some questions that arose included what facade system would be effective against the bugs, humidity, and rain? Is FCAT interested in exploring ways to use local materials, or would they rather stick with concrete? And what is the day-to-day life of the FCATeros like? All of these would be addressed during our trip to Ecuador to visit the site in person. So we spent our spring break in Ecuador getting to know the site more intimately. At FCAT, we learned about their reforestation work, measured the topography, and got to see many parts of the reserve. It was valuable to spend so much time with the very people we are designing for, which helped to understand the very specific needs of the place. This and ground truthing our initial assumptions were the most important parts of the trip. We all presented our work to the FCATeros, which is where the most significant feedback arose. They shared their opinions on materiality, siting, and overall arrangement of the site, often making points that we had yet to consider, such as the need to play music before meets. So then responding to that feedback, we worked to develop 2 cohesive master plans, taking the Ecuadore's comments and our own experiences into account. For reference, this is the existing site plan showing EFCAT's current arrangement. And then this first iteration adds additional housing further up the road from the existing bunkhouse, field stations behind the bunkhouse, additional housing to complete the courtyard, a larger lab space moving down the hill, and the commissary relocated across from the Equivalley Court. In this plan, the existing commissary building is converted to a multi-purpose classroom. And then this master plan maintains the Ecotero housing and field station locations of the previous plan, but includes a multi-purpose building, including the courtyard. The commissary and lab buildings are again across the road from the Equivalley, separated from all the housing. So the late night, early morning activities there do not disturb those who are sleeping. Luis preferred this plan, which is where we focused our work for the rest of the semester. And then in the physical site model, the translucent buildings represent those that exist currently, and the white buildings are the proposed buildings. Here are some additional views to get a sense of how everything would coordinate across the entire site. To further explain each individual proposal, we will walk you through a day in the life at EFCAT. Imagining someone waking up in a new housing building, eating breakfast at the commissary, taking a class in the multi-purpose space, and then going out into the field station to complete some research.
We're just going to switch PDFs.
Wired one of you.
Just
Came back.
So Amanda, William, and Tom and I team on housing. So the first thing that FPTOs would experience in a day in the life at FCAT is waking up in their new housing. While in Ecuador, our group discussed previous housing proposals with the FPTOs, and we learned a great deal about what spatial characteristics were important to provide. Our various discussions had central themes of privacy, material longevity, and social gathering space, among others. And as a result of the feedback, we pivoted to designing housing specifically for FPTOs. So what we learned was then translated into a new proposal of the current bunkhouse highlighted here in orange within the master plan. And the location of the new housing building is adjacent to the existing fire pit and road and can be characterized by its sloping topography. Moving Ecuador housing away from the current bunkhouse was also deemed important for privacy and police isolation. The new design began by looking at the existing conditions and then adding the building massing to fit with the road. From there, the massing was split in two to create a breezeway condition and a central gathering space, which was something deemed requisite and similar to the existing house. The design was then separated into public and private spaces, with private rooms along the front face of the building, shown here in black, in more public space facing out into the forest shown here in gray. The floor plates of the building were then fragmented and terraced down the existing slope of the hill, conforming to the existing topography of the site. Then each floor plate was slightly angled to create directed views into the forest. So this is a plan of the site as it exists currently. And this plan shows the roof of the new Afghan along with an updated fire pit plan between the roads and kind of the central space. The floor plan of the building is shown here and incorporates the feedback and desires we received from the Afghaneros. To name a few, bathrooms are located on suite, bedrooms prioritize privacy, and the forest facing balconies allow for optimal views of nature and places to rest. The assumed inversion of the floor plan is oriented as to how an Afghanero would access and enter the building. And here are the different spaces of the breezeway balconies, bathrooms, and bedrooms located. So going how people may utilize the space, we may look at how different types of people move throughout the building. For example, a more sociable Efkatero may move from their room in the morning to the breezeway to socialize, after which they go to the commissary and then to work. Upon returning, they may utilize the central gathering space again, or perhaps spend time on balconies outside. Whereas someone with less energy to socialize, or perhaps who works at night, may, upon returning, simply cut across the social spaces to retreat to their own private balcony area. Furthermore, the proposed level and central gathering area are both accessible via ramp, allowing for users who may not be able to utilize the stairs to occupy their own personal room as well as the primary social area. Here we can see a confluence of multiple user types and how they may move about the building when it is at maximum occupancy. The paths primarily converge in the central gathering space and diverge where they may use their balcony spaces and rooms for a moment of quiet. Which brings us to the sections. Where here we can see the central gathering space where Efkateros can partake in their usual group activities such as playing music and games, which can also operate as a meeting space. The mirrors look in a direction counter to other groups in order to frame the gorgeous views. With the orientation of the roof slope, in this longitudinal section, it becomes more evident how each person may utilize their private rooms and bathroom containing storage, while still allowing room to be opened up to the outdoors via the sign door. Central gathering space also remains a key feature. With the orientation of the roof slope, she is provided to the interior rooms and balconies throughout the day, allowing for a more diffuse light condition through the clerestory windows and sliding doors. Thatch roofing also ensures that the corrugated steel roof deck is not exposed to direct sunlight and heat, thus keeping the interior cool throughout the day, but through its insulating power at night. It also becomes possible that the roof area may be utilized for solar panels to provide energy for the house. The roof slope also allows for rainwater retention systems to be implemented, where rain runs down the roof, into gutters, down through the column, and into a storage tank installed in the building. There are also passive ventilation strategies implemented, where hot air may leave the room through clerestory and awning windows on both primary facades, allowing for cooler air to enter the doors. There are also active ventilation systems in the form of ceiling fans, which brings us to the construction methods used on the north-facing facade. The primary floor structure involves site-cast concrete footings, which then support a corrugated steel floor deck and concrete finished floor. The main structural walls are made of CMU, and a double-skin barricade system is utilized for the non-structural walls. The bamboo cross-braced columns, held by steel pin joints, are a major facade element. The cable railing is also utilized to minimize interference with views. Lastly, the roof involves the use of CLT rafters, on top of which is a galvanized roof deck, wooden purlins, and a thatch. The balcony side utilizes similar strategies as the roadside facade, with the exclusion of the barricade. Instead, wooden and glass sliding doors are utilized to be able to open or close the window outside. Furthermore, here, a steel gutter is used to connect the PVC piping that runs through the bamboo columns, making up the water entrance system. And here we can see the material palette of the structure as showcased in the details. Thatch for the roof, CLT for the rafters, corrugated steel roof and floor decks, CMU and barricade for the walls, as well as bamboo for the walls.
This section model shows the cross-laminated timber structure. The walls depicted here are not hollow cavity walls. Instead, they are barricade infill. The roof joists support a layer of plywood and a layer of steel decking that is then enclosed by thatch. This front elevation shows the exterior of the building that most users will see as they approach. The windows are placed at the top of the structure to ensure privacy for the occupants inside. The cross-laminated timber frame structure has alternating infill of barricade earth for the sleeping quarters and concrete masonry units for the restrooms. Although this is the public-facing facade, it acts as a sort of barrier between public and private spaces, with a central breezeway and 2 side passageways granting access to the more social balcony space in the back of the structure. The elevation of the left side of the building shows how it drops down and curves around the site as you approach the main campus from the top of the hill. A ramp in the front of the building leads to an accessible bedroom unit in the back. The elevation of the right side of the building shows the newly designed fire pit as it relates to the social life of the housing. The roof of the fire pit mimics the roof of the housing, creating shelter from the rain while still allowing smoke to escape. The back porch of the housing cantilevers out over a steep incline, making way for views of the forest. The back elevation shows the social life of the building. Private bedrooms face out towards the forest with large sliding glass doors. In this drawing, you can see how the thatched roofs drop down with the landscape and collect water for the retention tanks that sit beneath the large central gathering space. A thatched roof acts as a noise buffer against potentially loud rainstorms. 4 of the roof structures slope down toward the forest, stopping the sun from heating up the bedrooms, while the central roof opens up towards the forest, allowing for greater views.
This 1:50 scale model acts as a physical exploration of how the building sits on the ground and relates to its surroundings. It also suggests some of the construction methods involved, as well as lighting qualities that could occur. These views of a roadside of the building showcase the protected entryway, as well as the way the building processes down the hill with split levels following the slope. On the other side of the model, we get a glimpse of the balcony experience as it hovers over the steeply sloped vegetation. You can also clearly see how the roof lines correspond to the ascending floor plates, with the exception of the counter-sloping roof that projects out from the central space. Last, we get a dramatic look from below, showcasing some of the substructure that achieves these seemingly hovering cantilevers. We also can see a glimpse of how the balcony might be experienced in perspective. The sloping roof supports creating an organic wavy effect. Moving into the perspectives, we get an idea of how the design may actually be experienced. This view shows the building's relationship to the rest of the campus just down the road. The design invites people to come and go as they please, with the stairs and ramps running parallel to the road, and the main entry projecting outward, beckoning you to enter. It also showcases the shading effect of the roof lines and the privacy achieved by the high windows that face the campus. Looking on the balcony side, we get a glimpse of how these spaces might be used as the evenings winds down. The central overlook acts as a point of socialization, while still remaining separate and sonically isolated from the bedrooms. On the right, we can see into one of these bedrooms, which are quite spacious while still being highly efficient in terms of storage. And last, we get a view looking up the ascending balconies as people begin to retire for the evening and perhaps sing a song before doing so. The balcony spaces provide ample room for socializing, bird watching, or even hammocking, as you can see toward the back. The large sliding glass walls of the bedrooms offer unobstructed views out toward the forest, while curtains provide the option for extra privacy from this path of circulation, if so desired.
This drawing shows the building again, located in the context of the site. And from there, one could walk down the hill to go see.
So we're gonna stop now for some questions or comments for like one section, but there is gonna be a section at the very end of the presentations for a question and comments section. Thank you. If there are any. If not, we can, if you'd rather hold your questions till the very end, that's fine, but we'll wait for your questions now as well.
Jordan?
Yes. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Thanks. First of all, I just want to say I'm so impressed. Wow. I'm blown away by the quality of this, and I really appreciate too the process that's gone into it. The question that I had is, I don't know, with this structure that you're showing here, have you thought about housing for men and women in particular? Is that a theme that you've thought about whether it would be sort of intermingled or whether there's separate blocks depending on gender, or how you're thinking about that aspect of it?
Well, right now it's designed to be mixed gender, but because it's kind of split in the middle, I suppose it could be divided into like men on the left and women on the right as one option. But right now we haven't designed it specifically for a gender or a gender divide.
Okay.
You mentioned glass. And I wanted to ask, because I don't know what group is going to talk about it, but I'm assuming there's going to be a group that talks about the challenges of glass that burns. So did you all think about glass as windows? I'm opening that up. I don't know who I should ask that to, but I know it's an issue.
So we tried to keep most of the glass on the more protected facade of the building, and in addition to that, there are glass options available to be coated in like special special reflective like materials that signal burns that there is a surface there. So there are ways to counteract that. There would still require some cleaning and maintenance of the glass, but nothing.
And is it available in Ecuador? Yeah. That was supposed to be, yeah.
I'm curious about the material choices and structural systems that you guys are deploying, because it seems like you've decided to add a little bit of all the systems. You've got a cast in place foundation, a poured in place concrete floor, a CLT structure, and a thatched roof. Is that right?
Yes.
Can you talk us through the decision making there? Like, I can kind of understand the pieces and parts, but also the logistics of these different types of materials. And I can see some benefits and some drawbacks to your approach, and I'd love to hear you talk through your decision making process.
Yeah, I mean, it is like quite the mixed bag, right? Of like techniques and materials. This is also like, we're thinking of this as like a sample of possibilities, really, because we know that there's 2 more years of this research studio, and we didn't want to like set anything perfectly in stone. I suppose we could have just done like a steel structure or CLT structure with concrete foundations, but
Was it driven, at least for now, in terms of like maintenance or what you learned about earthquake resistant construction, or what are some of the driving things in the decisions right now?
Yes, so a CLT frame as it's being proposed or imagined here would be relatively easy to assemble as opposed to like a more complex structure. And the Bareke infill is just that, it acts as an infill. And as far as like structural considerations for like earthquakes, that's not like I don't think the design got developed quite that far, but there are shear walls with the CMU, and there could be steel cables to help resist some of those kinds of forces. But yeah, I think the main idea was it is a bit of a hodgepodge, but I think I'm trying to incorporate some of the best elements of each of the new things that we learned as just sort of a testing ground to see and that experimentation leads to successful machines.
A question of like sustainability and like different kinds of sustainability. There's like the kind of sustainability that's the material sustainability, which is like barricade lessens the impact on the material, but it might not last as long as the steel component would be. And so it's like kind of playing with those two, like trying to balance and figure out the durability versus the impact of the planet.
In the orientation, winds, is there any prevalence direction of winds?
North, so kind of from the left across, yeah, across that way.
From the left to the other side?
Yeah.
I don't think
It's always
Correct.
You can see my main screen.
Nice high to the low side.
high side to the low side.
high side to the low side. Okay, so I wonder because the structure, the tilted structure in that side is a little bit like overkill, I think. But if you, instead of tilting that structure that you probably do not need, because it's very close to the wall, is the entire wall that tilts. So you don't have the wind pulling up the roof. You might have that volume more adapted. About the glass, I would break in favor of you that you are not exposing glass to the sunlight. Is that correct?
Correct.
So that minimizes the problem for the birds because you don't have the reflection. So you don't need the anti-reflective glass that costs like $1 million. So don't expose it to the direct light, therefore not to the mirror effect of that. That's it. But one thing I have a big question is why the symmetry?
Or the symmetry? Well, we tried to break up the symmetry a little bit by staggering it down the hill.
We feel that the symmetry reads more strongly in plan, graphic, and an experience because of the way that the terracing has. Also, reuse the central space that the existing functions currently offers and sort of pivot around that. So that sort of is what inspired this wing design.
It's because my sense is that in plan, it looks like makes sense, but when I see that in this image, I don't understand the symmetry because you have a piece that is in the center, but has all kinds of conflicts with the roof. You're going to have leaks there, and in going down, it seems like you could push for maybe it's down where you have the gathering space that has the like in a boat. You gather in the hood or in the back, but you don't gather in the center of the boat. No? So it seems like you are going to the hood with the views down through that, and maybe that would help you to avoid the problems of forced symmetry and change of tilting of the roofs in that. I think, and then you have a more clear access with a ramp. Using the natural topography, just the first ramp could be almost unnoticed because you just put a little bit of earth and you're there. And then the second ramp in the end can be a light ramp that goes from the main gathering space down. And then you get rid of a lot of noise and save some money. Most important.
Yeah. I really like the presentation, and also because I was part of the mid review, and I think that you have jumped a lot. It's true that you have like a catalog of proposal. Maybe now you have a kind of catalog of materials that in a second phase maybe you need to
which is your studio, so it's helpful.
Yeah. But it's true. I agree with all the comments. And speaking about how you flip the routes, I think that also the models are really, really good because then you will see which are going to be the most problematic elements in terms of solving with a kind of construction detail, but also speaking, okay, you provoke the entry in the middle, but at the same time, if it's raining a lot, it's like, okay, this is a kind of rainfall, right? So sometimes it's like, okay, I know that, but doing this kind of job is like, okay, it's when you realize how we can fix or how we can mitigate a little bit those effects. I know that you have a kind of collection of water.
William kind of designed this like centerpiece to act as kind of a waterfall system that pools into this area here that's funneled to the water system.
Okay, what I'm looking here, I imagine myself, you know, running up to the door. There's a few things I really like about your proposal, and I think one of the things, if I remember the site well, is that you're on some of the highest ground. And so perhaps the water that you're collecting on these roofs is, there's a large tank that's feeding the structures down below, and you're relying on gravity to do a lot of the work because pumps inevitably are gonna, I mean, they actually have the ability on site to troubleshoot a lot with the pumps and the motors and the technology, but I think in so much as you can rely on the dumb systems like gravity to do the work, you're just setting these guys up for success. And so I think the siting is great in that it's close by, but also removed. I don't think the FCATeros want to deal with the late night guitar strumming nonsense of the visitors. So I feel like some of your instincts are clever. I also share some misgivings about the formal composition right now and that symmetry or the kind of, there seems to be like an unnecessary tension within the structure right now. I think what works really well is the unitization. Like you've got a unit that seems to work pretty well and would give some autonomy to the folks living here. Like they don't have to share a bathroom with 40 other people, which would be a gift, I imagine, to people living here all year round. But maybe to lean into that more, like the idea of this as a unit that could be aggregated along with others down a hill, or could be the little outposts in the woods. Like that unit could be combined into a collective or could be an independent. And knowing that the unit itself is a teaching tool for whoever builds the next unit is important, because I think one of the struggles there, if I am gonna like kind of read into the situation more than maybe I should, is that if we come up with different systems and different designs, there's a big learning curve to just like, how do you build this thing and how do you make it last a long time? So if we create a unit that can be replicated in many different forms and ways, and you can learn from the thing itself before you make the next one, I think that would be a gift to the folks that are living there and working there and making these projects happen.
I also appreciate just and then I know we took a move, but just say that site is very complicated because of the steep slope that falls off of. And so I appreciate that you were like facing and you use that to your advantage in terms of giving people outlook. And we heard that, like you've heard that a lot from people, that they want to be able to have views. People want to be able to have views that go into the forest. And I think that was successful.
Luis or Eileen or
Luis.
Other questions?
Okay. Thanks.
We're gonna pass it off to you.
And you couldn't hear this. Yeah.
Sorry.
Ellie, can you hear us?
Yes, I just want to tell you that it is difficult to hear when you are talking through the microphone.
Ah, okay.
Yes, it has another sound at the background.
Let's try.
It might be when people are asking questions.
Let's try.
Ellie, let me try. Ellie, can you hear us? This is better. Then you have to just.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, it is better. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie.
Yeah, it's not down. I think it's just the mouse is dead. Away. Awesome. Beautiful.
Yeah. Talk really loud.
Okay. Awesome. So during the earlier part of our semester, our group was tasked with examining the commissary, and in our analysis, we divided the potentials for the commissary into two schemes, the upper campus scheme and the lower campus scheme. The upper campus scheme focused on retrofitting the existing commissary and building to address structural issues and also enhance the utilization of the space. And the lower campus scheme proposed an entirely new building for the commissary, incorporating additional housing for the cooks, a larger kitchen, and expanded storage facilities. We understood the importance of thoroughly evaluating the structure and its limitations, and the upper campus scheme acknowledged the current building's limitations and aimed to optimize the space by redesigning the layout and addressing structural issues. The approach aligned with the principles of sustainable design and encouraged maximized use of the existing structure and resources to minimize waste. On the other hand, the lower campus scheme presented an opportunity to envision a new space of a purpose-built commissary that can better meet the needs of the community it serves. It was financially more sustainable regarding the need to address issues with the current commissary annually. And in the design, the additional housing for the cooks that was included helped improve the quality of life for the staff, increasing satisfaction. Moreover, the larger kitchen and extensive storage space helped enhance the quality of food preparation and experience for students, faculty, and staff. Following our meeting, once we finally went to Ecuador and met with the kitchen staff in EPCAT, our group gained a deeper understanding of their requirements, and based on the insight, we decided to proceed with the lower campus scheme to address these needs. In terms of determining the location of the commissary on the lower campus, we addressed various factors, including proximity to the existing kitchen and dining areas, accessibility and available space. And after careful consideration, we identified a relatively large area of flat land located across from the Equivalley courts, where the nursery and composting beds currently exist. And the location presented an opportunity to repurpose the space for the commissary to better meet the needs. Some of the measurements in this large flat space. This partie diagram here illustrates the division of space between the public and private areas. The design locates the front of house space closer to the main road
and pathway connecting the upper and lower campuses. And this placement facilitates easier access for visitors and also promotes a sense of openness and welcoming. Conversely, the back of house space is positioned closer to the trees and vegetation, creating a visual buffer between the private and public areas. And the placement helped to shield the private areas from public view and also ensure a greater degree of privacy for the occupants and cooks. So this diagram provides a clear visualization of the main walkways and pathways within the building. The design incorporates an open drink and snack area that's accessible to the public without interfering with the staff's workflow. And the approach promotes a sense of openness and transparency while ensuring that the cooks can work without distractions. Moreover, the public dining space is designed to be very open and providing welcoming friends in an atmosphere for dinner. And the layout's arranged in a manner that optimizes traffic flow and facilitates easy access to different areas of the dining space. And the strategy helps to create a more inclusive and active environment. And then the upper floor is solely for kitchen staff with their bedrooms, bathrooms, and a little private balcony area for them.
The new commissary floor plan includes a dining room that is 3 times larger than the existing commissary dining room, to where it can comfortably accommodate at least 100 guests for a meal. The kitchen is twice the size of the existing kitchen, featuring 2 operable window walls and triple the amount of existing appliances. Adjacent to the kitchen is a pantry for storing food and tableware, followed by a private dining or resting room for the kitchen staff. And off of that kitchen staff dining room is an additional storage room that is available as needed. 2 restrooms are tucked away for privacy and accessibility when on the lower campus.
So something to note here is the relationship between the kitchen and dining space. So for one, the cocineras explained that a snack fridge separate from the kitchen would help them feel less disrupted when the efecteros need to grab some fruit or food to go, which also makes this food more accessible to the efecteros and visitors alike. And then the large opening between the kitchen and dining space allows the cocineras to see clearly into the dining room, which they explained was necessary to ensure that everyone gets a plate at meal times. And then within the kitchen, it was clear that they needed additional fridge space, additional counter space, and ample burners, all shown here, along with more additional appliances and additional sinks for washing, prepping, etc.
The second floor serves as housing for the kitchen staff with comfortable accommodations for up to 9 staff members with a private bedroom for the head cook, Maria. They share a restroom that includes 3 water closets, 3 sinks, and 2 showers. A communal balcony on the far left side provides space for the staff to relax and enjoy the views after work.
So within the bedrooms, they include enough space for all the cooks to sleep and actually store their personal belongings. And since the openings are oriented away from the road, they can take in the view of the trees and have some privacy. And like the existing bunkhouse, the beds include nets to protect from mosquitoes, and the operable windows are screened for the same reason. And then along the road, the commissary is placed at the edge of that flat clearing we mentioned earlier, at the base of the hill to the upper campus. And then an ample overhang covers the path in front of the commissary. A terrace garden could be constructed going up the hill to improve food production as well.
So this user journey diagram provides a detailed overview of the different. Okay, this user journey diagram provides a clear visualization of, provides a detailed overview of the different space and the uses throughout the day. The diagram captures the sequence of activities, highlighting the movements of the various users throughout the building. During this transition period between meal times, cooks and kitchen staff are engaged with food preparation, cooking, and storage activities. One of the cooks will typically descend the stairs from their private living quarters to access the storage area using this outer ring of circulation you can see here. They will retrieve the necessary food items and proceed to the kitchen, either from storage or from outside of the building. And here another chef joins to cook, entering from the kitchen's folding counter in the main dining space before cooking at one of the 2 islands. Few members of the kitchen staff join to cook, and they circulate between the stoves, fridges, and sinks, creating this triangle, which is very known and good for workflow in a kitchen while keeping in mind designing the kitchen. So during mealtime, Epicateros line up and you see the most activity in this middle space, as well as circulation around the tables, the snacks, and the drink area. While the Epicateros are eating during mealtime, the kitchen staff are in the kitchen cleaning dishes as they come back, as well as plating and serving dishes from the stove to the counter. And as the night continues on, the staff will also be eating in their own designated dining area. This drawing features a longitudinal section that provides a detailed view of the back of house kitchen space, as well as the private living quarters located above. Notable features within this section include the septic tanks and also this food cleaning station, which are such essential elements of the building's functional design. So when the Epicateros return after a day working in the field, they'll come to the boot cleaning station where they'll take off their boots, spray them down, and then be able to enter this space. This drawing offers a cross-section view of the building, highlighting the separation between the public and private areas, while also providing a better understanding of the roof plane. This section provides valuable insights into the building's design, showcasing its ability to seamlessly integrate with the surrounding environment. And then here's just a sectional perspective showing the roof structure, which I'll further explain as well as a potential dining arrangement.
This is the front elevation of the building, and it expresses the solidity and openness with the windows located strategically strategically to allow light and airflow, and transom windows are in the more private walls, such as the storage rooms and restrooms. And the two side elevations display the ceiling, roof, and structure construction. And then the back elevation emphasizes the openings for views and airflow circulation. The back of the building is designed to be more private with a focus on the internal program areas and the views to the scenery outside. The new design aims to create an efficient and functional space for the commissary with careful attention paid to circulation, program proximity and exposure, kitchen staff needs, and the comfort of staff and guests.
So then in Axon, you can see all of the roofs are tilted to allow for rain flowing off of the building with an ample overhang in places where people need to walk. And then the orientation of the largest roof planes is such that solar panels could be added in future years, addressing the energy needs at EPCAT. And then structurally, the exploded axon begins to show how the building is assembled. So going into the assembly of the building, you start with the footing, the beams and the girders, the columns, trusses, purlins, and the roof plate. Looking at the materiality of the building from the ground up, we decided terracotta tiles would be a great use for the floor after talking to the kitchen staff because they're both replaceable and durable. Looking at the walls, we decided to use fiber cement sheeting because it works very well with the conditions and it's very easy to assemble and work with. And that would have a waterproofing membrane additionally for the humid, wet environment. And then we have a simple steel gutters that is just connected to the corrugated metal roof. And then in terms of the windows and the screens, we would have a bug screen on one of the outer layers of the window, as well as an operable single pane window that would also be used. In terms of ventilation, that's really important, especially in cooking, because there's a lot of heat that's generated. So in the kitchen itself, there's multiple windows throughout the kitchen that allow flow through both the dining space and those open window spaces, as well as the stoves will be located on these windows so that when they use the LPG, they can open those windows. And same goes for above in terms of ventilation. Regarding the rainwater collection system, the rain would just be collected to an underground reserve under the kitchen in the building. As well as with the light, because heat is such an important aspect, like keeping the heat away from the building, we were making sure that the windows could get enough natural light they needed while protecting from the heat. So then looking at the model, you can see that like large open dining room space with a solid wall programming in the back. And then here it's like the relationship of the roof planes is evident. And then on this side, there's an extra large overhang with like space for a boot wash just to help keep the actual building clean so mud isn't trapped in. And then this is just the view from the front and the experience up on the Cocineras private balcony. And then here you can see a bit of the floor assembly with the metal decking, the poured concrete, the walls framed with light gauge steel, and then the diagonal bracing holding up the roof. No. On Zoom, we are opening up the floor for questions now. Feel free to unmute yourself and
Well, I have no questions, but I think it's great. All your work is great.
Thank you.
Louise, Aileen, you have no questions? You have questions, Louise, Aileen?
No, I don't have any questions. I add to the congratulations that Ellie said. Yeah, I appreciate that everything. It looks awesome.
Well, I have to say that I'm very impressed about your work, and we are very grateful, and congratulations is what I can say. It's wonderful.
I'm curious, okay. That's amazing. I love that they love it. But also, let's get to the phone.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you tell me why when you were showing us a diagram of where the water goes to, why were you showing us the shortest of the roofs and not this big, long, generous roof that the most of the rainwater is being collected from? I suspect it's because the solutions are all inelegant.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like to gutter this big, I mean, this is all of like this water, all of it is coming on this edge. And I think that while this scheme is beautiful in many ways, or like achieves many of the goals you're looking for, that's a heck of a lot of water, and we have to think of an elegant way to capture it, right? And so I guess one of my thoughts is that it doesn't always have to go to a gutter that goes to a spout, that goes to a tank. Like there could be some wild moment where you're just like waterfalling this water off with one side or another and capturing it in some kind of tank or runnel or something below that brings it to where you want it to go without having to do the like totally dumb downspout that looks like an added on thing late in the game. So that's one quick thought. It's just like, I think you could puzzle on that for an hour and come up with 5 cool solutions that don't involve them. It's stuck on downspout that you have to do late in the game. Do some scene setting for Edson.
That stuff also has to be huge with super hard rain, like even our building, small center, you know, there's like in building downspouts, multiple ones like this big.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have to start having a lot of big gross stuff tacked on. But I think you could, like in the last project, you could have the whole strip could be some sort of planted or, you know, capturing basin that is seen and would have to be maintained. So that might be a concern, but is something that could then ship water elsewhere.
Yeah, totally.
And tell me about the middle material, the one that what was it called?
fiber cement.
Yes, so I'm asking all the questions of like, is that available? Like, that was one of the things that you're supposed to figure out, right?
Yeah,
So
that's definitely a widely available material.
Okay.
Used. Yeah.
I'm gonna point out some little detail that you should fix before to make your portfolio. Your stair you need to make the apple solution, otherwise you are gonna hit your head. Go to your section, and because maybe here it's not really accurate, but if you go to your section or elevations, okay, go to the next section. Over there, you see? You need to break for the roof, and maybe it's an option to, I don't know, it's a kind of light well or whatever. But needs to be a solution, otherwise you need to rethink your step, okay? And that is so important because sometimes we make all our plans and then when you are on site, it's like, okay.
We did actually struggle with that. As we were modeling.
So that is one of the things that you need to fix a little bit. And, and ramps entry. I think you may have had that in your drawings, right? And then, there is a big opportunity to fix a little bit that handbrake, right? So it's not touching the maybe you extend that wall a little bit, so you protect a little bit the entryway. That is one thing. The other thing that then in the future, I know that you have been working a lot, huh? So many proposals that I've been hearing, then wrapping up in a couple of things, but it's just to improve, huh? I'm not saying that your project is wrong because it's so beautiful and it's so wonderful, but then is when you need to think about how we can fix that. How it's gonna make this kind of handbrake. It's gonna be the same wall is going up or not, or maybe that is a kind of flat roof and then start building. I don't know. So that's why it's also important to make a model, because in a way you can find out some of the things that you can even improve.
It's an interesting thing, like model. I mean, and part of this is like the timing of the studio, but it's, and we've been talking about like, how do we integrate models earlier on? Because it's like model not as end product, but model as a working process. And part of that was, you know, you all didn't get on site until later. And like, so the things we're raising are things that can also be part of the like learning process for the studio as well.
I will say, I think you're doing a lot of things really well. And I saw this at some point, maybe it was midterm. And I think this one is better, much better. You're moving in the right direction. And the thing that this form kind of like, the questions it ignites in my mind are related to how similar formally this is to the current commissary. Like it's not the same, but there's enough similarities that my mind starts going towards like, oh wait, what are the issues with the current commissary? And that this one is either addressing or not. And I think this could be much more, this could have a lot more lateral bracing built into it if the wall type, like depending on the assembly and the wall type. I think the metal panels or the hardy type panels, the cementitious fiberboard could help out. Just like some general X bracing in the solid bits could go a long way. But one of the things that I notice is like even if you look at the back facade, the more punctures you have in that, the less lateral stability you have. And so you may be strategic about where the windows are. Like maybe this is a really nice like filled kitchen, but maybe you could do with 1 or 2 less windows, and that would allow you a much more rigid corner that helps prevent some of the current issues they're having with building racking and instability. And these are like easy fixes and minor things, but worth pointing out in light of what we know the folks at FCAT are facing right now. And the other thing that it makes me think about is, you know, there's this giant, beautiful dining hall. And right now, I think they have like a roll down plastic strategy that they use when it's particularly rainy or cloudy, like when the fog moves in. And so how are we designing a system that's better than that? And right now, I don't think there is a idea that's being put forward. That might just be like a next layer of development. But I think it's critical in these projects to kind of take an assessment of what is now and how what we're doing is better. And you're achieving that in some ways, but not in others. And so I think that's the next step of development, is thinking through some of those details. Last little bit in that vein is that your day in the life of diagrams, I love that both groups have been thinking about that, but it also makes me wonder like, oh, what are the other parts of the commissary that we're not currently seeing? And so I know there's like the little structure where fruit is ripening, right? Like the little banana hut or whatever, I don't know what you would call it. And so like, where is that in position to this? Is it in here already and I just don't know it? Or is it outside?
It's out in the back.
Out back. Oh, I wonder
So
what that
right,
thing was.
yes, right down here, it's the grill and.
And we
Little
decided
little
to
thing?
do definitely like when it was the most high traffic, like moments of the day. They made notes that they don't use like the grill when there are big groups or like it's high traffic. It's usually like there're just a few people.
Cool.
There.
And when we were talking with them, one of the other reasons they don't use it is because it generates so much smoke and it puts all that smoke into common areas.
Oh, wow.
Which is why we put it like behind the building so that that wouldn't like infiltrate like a big courtyard that everyone's trying to spend time in or something.
That's cool. I love that you're giving it that level of thought. And I would say too, I think that currently there's like some little composting area back in the woods. And so even thinking about where that might be, I guess that's why you have some doors coming off the back so people could go down there and toss the scraps. But thinking about how those little moments incorporate into the day in the life diagrams, I think is a useful, it shows a level of attentiveness. Like it forces you to think about these things and it shows us that you're having that level of attentiveness. So yeah, small, but useful ways to like fold in some more ideas and information.
One thing to tack on, this might not help your lateral stiffness question, but it's something Emily was saying too, is that it almost seems like that main room for cooking is like the same size as the existing one. Is it about the same?
It's double the size of that. Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's amazing. Because I was gonna say, like, it looked about the same, but then you also get all that support space, so that's really
And
nice.
also like the additional pantry means that they don't have to store food within the kitchen.
Exactly.
Like instead have a place
There's
that's
all
shielded
those,
from bugs
yeah, and their own
everything.
dining
Yeah.
space.
Currently,
That's
they
great.
have like 1.5 working, like 3 burner stoves. They have 2 sinks and 2 fridges, with like a very small trash and that. So we're like trying to have 3 and all that.
Yeah.
And it's like a whole wish list from them.
Yeah, like this is a larger context for everyone. Like you all heard specific things and I know this design responds to specific needs that you heard. And I think like framing your presentation with the needs that you heard and how your project is responsive to them the architectural responses of like, we need lateral stability, like more lateral stability. Where did the louver doors go that every design had and none of them do? But I don't know, maybe it was about the models, but I don't know, just saying, I'm just throwing that out there, but all those questions would come up, but the thoughtfulness in which the designs were made in terms of response would be helpful for us to have, right? So that's good for everyone, like.
Quick, I think everything is really elegantly scaled and there's something interesting about the play between the roofs, but the one thing that seems maybe bigger than it's necessary is that back overhang roof. And I understand that you're trying to cover that outdoor space, but I wonder if there's a secondary strategy where the whole roof doesn't have to do that, especially given that you've got the growth of the forest on that side. So it's not like it's unshaded southern exposure. It is south-ish, right? But it's not, I don't think that's the biggest concern right there. And so it seems a little bit wild, especially like the experience of being in that top space with this like enormous roof out in front of you.
Yeah. I think there's another pass at all of these. Maybe I should wait till the next proposal, but if there's a certain tectonic language that one group's using that everyone else is like, oh, that's beautiful and could be like the language of FCAT. Like whether it's the little sloped columns or whatever it is, I think there could be like a final pass and everything that's sort of like, this is the, it's not a branding kit. That sounds like we're a used car salesman or something, but it's like the kit of parts that is of FCAT, which could be a pretty cool way for them to think about structures now and in the future.
Great, thank you. Let's move on to the next.
Choose the height. Oh, I was just curious, but that's just really we talked about like areas, right? Which is either good or bad. But I was just curious, it's like.
There's a lot, I just want to can also say to everyone, I know how much work I have to get done. It's like really.
But I didn't know if there was like.
I just like so much out of it. All this stuff was created after they got back.
That's about.
It's taller, things, yeah, so a lot of when that, it's just like.
It's like
I always end up going, I mean, I. I'll just think it's a study string with some of them. All right, hey y'all, we are the Bodega Group. I'm Simone, this is Caitlin, and this is Mario. We've been working on, like I said, Bodega has kind of grown and taken on a life of its own, and now it's 2 separate buildings in the multi-purpose room and then also a dedicated lab space. So here's kind of a look at the existing, or no, this is the proposed campus plan that you've seen in a couple of other projects so far. Here is Kaylin's building the multi-purpose room that kind of creates this little quiet, or not quiet, but the central campus quad area. And then here's the lab area down by the Echo Blackboard. And existing site that we've been working with right now. So here on the left-hand side is Kaylin's site with some nursery beds there. And then also there are nursery beds at my current site, but both of those are kind of being encompassed by the commissary's terraced garden. So that's kind of our plan for the existing stuff that is there currently. Looking at the lab plan is, this is a little space proposed for the lower campus. It's fully conditioned with a lot of space for storage of very sensitive equipments that the FCATERAs use and the researchers use. It's right on the main road with kind of ramped access there. So researchers can come drop off anything sensitive before they make their way to like the bunkhouse and other parts of campus. And also this is farther away from bunkhouses so that like lab and researchers working at night aren't going to disturb anybody in the bunkhouse. Here's a little bit closer look at what's actually inside of the lab. There's a boot rinse station outside, some outdoor working space with a screened-in porch. There's a sterile room for just different material samples, biosamples, whatever else, bathrooms, lab space, tons of equipment, and storage space. So looking at the section here, you can kind of see how the internal space is sandwiched between these 2 outside areas, one screened in, one's an outside, just open observation deck. Kind of a crazy roof overhang again, just trying to keep the sun off of the building at all. Not a ton of lines of sight between the internal lab space and like the rest of the campus, but there are clear story lights or windows all around, so you can still kind of get that diffuse light in without, I don't know, it makes it a quiet little secluded, isolated area. It feels scientific. This other section is kind of looking at potential furniture layout of the just different stuff that could go in there. The sterile room having kind of locked cabinets, we have a ventilation hood in there. We talked several times about the types of equipment that they would like to have in there. So I tried to accommodate some of what they had requested with that. The south elevation, I kept the south and the north sides fairly small. Just the south side was making me nervous with solar orientation. So the building is also shifted a little bit further to the north side to give a little bit more overhang to the south side. Elevations, the top one is as seen from the road. But it's sorry.
So thinking about the placement of the multipurpose space, which is up by the existing commissary and bunkhouse, we wanted to utilize the back slope of the hill to propose additional storage for more like long-term equipment. that also faced the forest and had a balcony view, but also could be used for water storage or housing, or depending on the needs of the campus. It could vary, but currently proposed as storage. And then on the ground floor plan, just showing a multitude of spaces and how they could be used, and trying to explore how different activities could happen at once in the space and serve kind of the needs of the campus. So having a larger space that could accommodate a large classroom or general meetings or a movie night or something relaxing, as well as more intimate spaces, kind of like the library library, conference room space, and then the enclosed back patio space, along with a covered but exposed patio space on the side that kind of creates a connection between the existing commissary and the proposed multipurpose. And then from the section, you can get a great idea of how the proposed multipurpose classroom would begin to connect with the campus and the commissary, as well as the proposal of a extended covered walkway that would cover the walking path for both the multipurpose, the commissary, and the bunkhouse spaces for rain. And then also seeing that below storage and how that's accommodated, and the focus of the forest views on the back end, and then more connecting with the newly formed quad on the front end. Looking at this section, you get a better idea again of the beneath storage, as well as the multi-level views and uses of the spaces. And you can see in this section how one would occupy the exterior patio space, as well as having classrooms or class time in the backspace, along with the smaller library conference room. Looking at elevation, I think this shows kind of the connection between indoor and outdoor, as well as the louvered front half of the facade to show variability of what could go on, as well as the covered walkway in the space. And then the side elevations kind of show more again of the connectivity with both the campus and the back half of the forest, and then that multi-level use of space. In the forest elevation, you get a greater idea of the connection between that screened in back room and then below the storage and kind of the balcony space, and how that relates to both the campus and the outdoor courtyard in the back of the works.
So this drawing shows the relationship between the interior of the multipurpose class with the exterior, the way in which the multipurpose interacts with the slope, proposed walkway, and viewing deck at the back of the forest. Looking at the structure of the building, the multipurpose class sits on a concrete pile foundation with a concrete floor plate. The storage area is made of concrete walls to ensure there is no threat of equipment stored getting wet. The multipurpose class above the storage area is a combination of concrete walls and operable wooden louver facade. This allows the multipurpose class to be enclosed and used for private meetings, as well as open up for informal events. The leisure deck is covered in a transparent screen to protect users from bugs and enjoy the space throughout the day. The clear story on top allows natural light to enter the space, even when the multipurpose is closed for private meetings, classes, etc. The roof is made of a corrugated metal sheet that is easily available, with a soundproofing sheet below to reduce noise when it rains. The lab is a steel structure with gypsum board and insulation panels for the walls, allowing activities that take place at night in the lab to do so without disturbing people in neighboring buildings. This is a detailed section of the multipurpose operable facade wall. There's a mesh that is fixed in the front of and on the exterior of this facade to allow this facade to be opened without bugs entering the multipurpose. Here are physical models of the multipurpose class. This is a wall section of the operable wooden louver facade. And here's a little bit of the experience. This is a view of the ward and the walkway, looking from the existing bunkhouse. Here's a view coming up from the main road, looking at the multi-purpose class. Here's a view of the walkways and courtyard from the multi-purpose class. And this is a view of the multi-purpose class deck when it's being used for leisure activities. And that was our proposal for the lab and multi-purpose class. Thank you.
Wait, is it enclosed or open? The multi-purpose class?
There's a back half that is enclosed and then the side is supposed to be open, but covered.
Oh, I see, where the table and
Right.
desks are. I think both of these structures are handsome in their own simple handsomeness sort of way. And I'm wondering, to me, there's perhaps a missed opportunity in how prominent both buildings are, like in the site approach and there's some way to like welcome or introduce FCAT or something, especially in the lower building, which was the lab. And even in this guy, which is on a hill, but it's like super visible kind of gateway in and of itself, even if you're passing the new commissary and the new lab and all of that. And so I wonder if y'all have ideas about how these structures are part of the like welcoming or signage or some of that part.
Go to one of those views that shows that, just so. Approach, that one worked.
Yeah, so that guy, I mean, you're coming from the lower elevation up the hill and you see this big building. And I guess I'm wondering if there's a way to have like signage or color or mural or whatever, like a welcoming presence. And I think that extends also to the lab, which is actually the first building you would see in this scenario.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity on that blank sidewall for something like that. I think we chose not to develop as much that facade, thinking about more the wind and the rain. So I think that could be opportunity for some type of welcoming signage. For sure.
Or even, I mean, like the extension of that, thinking about local networks and economies and things like that we're trying to foster and engender here. It's almost like, where are opportunities for co-creation in this like welcoming side of the building with like local artisans or something like that? And to me, that's where it gets to be a really interesting conversation, is like, what are the pieces and parts that we control, and what are the pieces and parts that we are collaborating on to make this thing of its place and giving back to its place.
This is a super simple comment, but I think the pathway, you could design that pathway a little, give it as much as intention as some of the other things you've done. And I say that for a couple of reasons. One is there was, I guess you're showing more planted stuff in the courtyard. So you're thinking of it as more passive maybe and not, but when I was there was a lot of use of that, even for cars, right? In part because it was a way to get off the roadway for a second and park, in part because it's convenient to load stuff up. But also because of elevation, the road stays a little bit like this and the courtyard flat, so sometimes they pull in there. So anyway, whether or not that's allowed, just being super intentional about like, can a car ever pull in there? Or does that pathway and potential plantings actually block you from doing that? And then right now, the pathway just seems to be, at least in the renderings, just pretty simple looking, like 3-foot path. Might want to be more generous just because people are coming and going. You're not 1 on 12 anyway, so it's not going to really act as a ramp. So it might as well show the stair where you need stair. And I only say that because it's such a prominent to Emily's point, entry point, right? That I think it's necessary to think about those things as much as you've thought about like extending the gallery into a full U, right? Where you stay out of the rain and can visit any of those buildings. So integrating kind of the upper and lower campus that way.
I almost want to just flip this plan where those galleries are part of the welcoming sort of like open balcony zone, and the classroom spaces are pushed back a little.
Yeah. You could be through the breezeway and around the corner, right? It doesn't have to be on the interior of that courtyard.
And now I'm getting excited about, now that the commissary is down the road, can we really like convert the current dining space to a bunkhouse or something with just like a full hammock land up above? That would be great. We've even got toilets already in the building. I think.
No, they're underneath the other buckets. Oh, we know, right, there is one.
The ladies who
The
are in the
ladies,
kitchen
yeah,
now,
there is one.
at least one.
Yeah, there's one.
So there's plumbing in there. We could always gang up another toilet on the floor above. Let's do it.
It's definitely fun thinking about what could happen to that.
Yeah.
Because it's great. It's good bones. It needs a little structure, but it's great bones. It's a beautiful building.
If there were like new divider walls for like more bunks, that suddenly helps with all the stability struggles.
They were kind of mixed on that, though. They're concerned about you reusing that structure for anything with like a lot of, they didn't say dead load, but a lot of just like consistently on it. So they're not kind of lukewarm on that idea, but it's still fun to think about.
I think, but if you propose to move the commissary, I think it is an important question to not have a so-so proposal on, but like a very strong, like, here's the best use case for this building, because and that's not on your group, it's on all of us to have that discussion, but like, if you're gonna either comes down or it stays, right? And if it stays, it's a lot of maintenance for them for the wood work, as you guys know, and it's ongoing structural concern. You might have to put some more money into it. So if that's the case, then like, just does one more multi-purpose space warrant its existence, right? Because you're designing some pretty intentional new stuff that solves a lot of those programmatic needs. And it's always lovely to have a big gathering space, especially covered, right? Because it rains a lot. But is that all it is, right? Or can it be something else? Or are we saying that like, if you can get 8 more bunk rooms in there for now, that's one less building they have to build for now, right? And if we're talking about phasing and funding.
Yeah. Why is there a material change here? Is this just like a product of quick model building?
I'm gonna say it was intentional.
I want to say something really dumb that probably doesn't need to be said, but I'm like more and more in life, I'm realizing that even the simple things need to be said. Maybe it's because I live with a 5-year-old who makes some really bad, really crazy choices. But anytime, especially on a roof, when we have materials that are coming together, different materials, different profiles, whatever, it's important to think like a raindrop. And what I mean is that you never want to put the first layer down and then add something on top of that. Because if I'm a raindrop, I am definitely scooting under there and raining down on the people below. And so anytime we're thinking about details, especially, or different materials coming together, you want to think about what is the path of, at least in this climate, what is the path of rain? And how is it going to do, like, it's going to do everything in its ability to get in your building and like make it a moldy mess. So you want to just make sure, especially in climates like this, that, you know, this layer gets built first and then the next layer overlaps, almost like think of it as shingling your materials. And if there's another layer that overlaps that. And so I think one of the things that happened at FCAT when they put the roofing on, I think it was shingled incorrectly the first time, right?
Yeah, and they had to take it out.
Yeah, and so it's not intuitive on the bunkhouse.
On the bunkhouse.
The metal that was placed on, they started from the top of the roof and worked their way down. The next layer went on top of that. And now suddenly you've got a huge moisture issue. And so at least on roofs and details, similar details, you kind of start at the bottom and shingle on top of that as you go. Does that make sense? I know that's probably not what was intended here, but it's like sometimes the little things are indicative of bigger systems of thinking. And so I just wanted to point it out. Make sure we all know that before we graduate.
Think like a raindrop.
Think like a raindrop.
So let's hear that.
No, I agree. Yeah, I think that everything that's said, I think that the most important thing is trying to have a conversation with the other wounded, which is because I think that itself your wounded is fine, it's okay. And yeah, it was beautiful, and also so happy in mind that think about like it's a kind of onion, so every layer needs to overlap the other. Thinking about the kind. That's
great. Thank you so much.
Everybody. Okay, wonderful. So finally, to end our day at EPCAT, we will propose an option for a field station. And in our early iterations of our field station, we tried to anticipate a range of users, programs, and locations. But after our conversations at EPCAT, we adjusted the parameters. So the primary user for whom we are designing for is the Ecuador, either to be used for leisure or for work. And so while these stations can still be imagined anywhere on EPCAT's land, we propose that a sort of prototype, if you will, be built behind the bunkhouse here. And we identified the site because there is an established path and clearing, which is already being used to enjoy a private spot on EPCAT's land.
We wanted to understand how these stations might fit into the daily lives of the Efcateros. The first day in the life starts when the Efcateros arrive for their 20-day shift, and these stations would be in easily accessible locations, such as the one we just identified, and be connected to camp life. We offer a quieter place to rest during the day or to sleep in at night. The second vision arose from discussion about providing a space for the Efcateros to bring their families and enjoy the reserve as a sort of vacation. We imagined the lake is a great location for this. This makes the field stations an extra special place for the Efcateros to get some well-deserved time off in the beautiful landscape, and of course, wake up to the views of the lake.
And that's how we arrive at our design. We wanted to be very mindful of the orientation for this site specifically, but we also needed to develop a strategy to determine how the station can be placed on other sites. And so for this site specifically, we placed the solid walls towards the direction of noise and light from camp. So users arrive from the back and along the side so that this covered outdoor space acts as a sort of filter before arriving at the private bedroom. And then another need that was strongly emphasized in our conversations was the desire to maximize views, which we also try to do with these alignments. And instead of incorporating the bathroom and the bedroom in one enclosed space, it was preferred to have them a bit separated. And in this way, if someone is muddy or if someone needs to use the bathroom, they can do so without kind of trampling through the private area. So the spaces are enclosed in the north to south direction, again, allowing for that separation, but cross-ventilated in the east to west direction.
So looking at the layers, which we'll talk more about, there's enclosed bamboo screen, a netting on the southwest, and then louvers for sun. And then on the east elevation, there's again cross ventilated through the net truss with louvers as well. And the screen is adjusted depending on the orientation, again, for privacy as well as sunlight concerns, which we'll talk about.
So we, for this proposal, implement light gauge steel framing as the primary construction with steel structural members. And then we use corrugated decking with a concrete topping to make up the platform. And embedded pilotis raise the structure off the ground, which makes it versatile for various slope terrains, which was also another possible desire to have it situated maybe somewhere near the lake, which is definitely a lot more sloped than this first site. So this sectional model at the 1 to 20 scale hinges open to further illustrate the various layers. So a bamboo screen is used for privacy with horizontal lats for more visible or public facades. And then select panels, as illustrated here, have the option of opening to maximize cross ventilation as well as views. And then operable louvers also allow for control over sunlight and ventilation and help to protect or help to prevent birds from flying into the glass, as also previously stated. So again, the platform is made up of concrete and steel decking. And the walls consist of light gauge steel framing with cement fiberboard. And then different levels of enclosure are added on, such as louvers, glass, which is inset from the edge, again, maximizing views, and mosquito net to protect from insects. And control over privacy is included with a bamboo screen along the perimeter of the platform, as well as opening panels and variations in the bamboo screen or the pattern. And then the roof is made up of a corrugated metal sheet with steel purlins, bamboo battens, and a thatched roof, which again makes use of local or sustainable materials.
Wait, it's thatching on top of corrugated?
Yes.
Is that pretty typical?
It was identified that a corrugated roof would be helpful in keeping rain out, but also it was noticed that it could be really loud because, and like when we were there, it was torrential downpours, so the thatch would help with that, as well as help with insulation of the heating of the metal.
Okay, so we want to make sure that even if these stations aren't built all at once, they have layers to make them useful throughout the process. So the simple platform offers a raised area to pitch a tent for camping. And adding just the frame and an enclosed toilet would be the next step during the building process. And the compostable toilet is a sustainable option that uses little water. And the next option would be a fully enclosed structure with the roof. And then the bamboo screen could be added later for more sun and bug protection while sitting on the porch. And finally, more sustainable systems could be added. Solar panels could provide the electricity needed within these small units, and rainwater collection could be used for the toilet. And the last site planning option is extending the foundation piles so that the field station can be placed in any slope terrain. And the bamboo screen, as Sari previously mentioned, will help mitigate the birds and the glass, but there's also products such as etched glass and stickers, just depending on the price that we want to spend. And then this drawing just shows our field station at the bottom in relation with the existing and proposed buildings on the site, existing in black and proposed in gray. And the story of FCAT has everything to do with the landscape, which we wanted to highlight here by conveying the soil composition, the tree types, the slope of the ground, and all the special buildings that make up FCAT. Finally, we have the perspectives that show the essence of these field stations in their context. The flat terrain could offer the possibility to use the gabion cage foundation. And then from the inside of the bedroom, a field station placed at the lake could provide beautiful views of the water from the porch or the bedroom. And this enclosed porch allows for you to be outside, but still be protected from the bugs and the rain. And then finally, the field station on the slope of the lake site could stand on tall columns, and the porch gives special privacy while still allowing you to be immersed in nature. Thank you.
Luis, Ellie, Eileen, do you have comments, questions?
I think this design is amazing, really, really nice. And I like what you mentioned about the birds, because this is actually a problem we have now sometimes with the big windows, because we need like light and air, fresh air. So I think this is a nice way to avoid this problem.
There's translucent films that could be a temporary solution right now, right? I know, I don't think, I'm not thinking that's a permanent thing, but I think there's probably an inexpensive way to address the
Yeah. Yeah, and another thing is the reflection of the windows. Sometimes it's tricky, but in my understanding, you are going to use the wood, right? The organic materials outside. So this is great. Inside the forest, it's like better not having reflections there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Eileen that it is our issue that we have constantly, because also we are NGO to take care of the, the biodiversity. So we don't want to lose birds and the glass, but also the glass is something necessary, to see the view and enjoy the nature also. But all these, I'm really glad when I saw that your projects are thinking about that, yeah, it's awesome. And also we are really open to have any advisor about that. And of course, yeah, I guess or your projects are really awesome because make the harmonic between, the issue that we have, but also you keep the beautiful buildings, and also who was inside can enjoy the nature. So yeah, it's great. And it is the thing, I saw everything here is as a result that you visit the station as the key part, because you have the opportunity to see everything that happened, and then you did. Right. Thank you.
An interesting thing that came out of a conversation, Jordan's not on anymore, but Nick and I met with Jordan, I don't know, like a week after we got back, the Jordan Caribbean, and Luis, you said this too, was that some of the FCATeros, more and more of the FCATeros are like spending some nights there, but not all the nights here, right? And so it's not like 20 days on, 20 days off as much, and so it's interesting to think, which is what we knew from the beginning, and just things have been changing. And so I think it's interesting to think about how these also can combine with like some of the housing strategies, that like that incremental nature of like, I don't know, somehow they can fit together, like just the staging of those. And then maybe there's not the need for like the larger housing structure in the way that it was initially imagined, because less people are staying on site. Less staff are staying on site continuously. And so it's interesting to think about how those two could be incorporated, how you all could think about those together and how things get staged. That's an interesting thing.
I think there's an interesting funding question for FCAT after this is all absorbed, but I think we've talked pretty openly with you guys and them about what's the first thing that could happen. And I think Jordan reinforced the idea that FCAT housing is pretty important. And so it's a question of if you can't build a huge building right away, it's not huge. Then how many units was the FCAT housing?
Only
Six. It's not huge, but a significant investment, right? So anyway, to Ann's point, and I think in earlier schemes, there were pods that I think Luis and others responded positively towards. So potentially could, in the shorter term, build a couple of those. I think there's also a suggestion from the first project where we were talking about the variety of materials of something we could do as part of our participation, but is there a way to get some of those panels built, right? We discussed that early on. It wasn't possible this semester, but maybe in future semesters, because if you want to try the rammed earth or any of the other systems and have some of those panels built and stick it in the middle of the forest and see how it does, because it's going to be a game of maintenance. Is it easier to, it sounds like it's terribly hard to keep all that wood up, but there may be other systems that are also difficult. And I know there's already lessons being learned from even the concrete and steel housing. And so if we can continue to learn those lessons as we continue our investigation, I think that would be one of the most helpful things we could do.
I think it's a clever strategy in that, from what I recall, Luis and others at FCAT saying there's a real desire for a more maintenance-free core unit, but a lot of the maintenance-free materials are a little bit harsh and cold and lifeless. Whereas the wood and the bamboo and all of that is what really warms a place up, but requires so much more maintenance. And so what you've done is develop a strategy that relies on those more cold, solid, maintenance-free materials for your core unit. And then you've adorned it with things that help prevent bird strikes, but may need a little bit more maintenance, but also aren't critical to this thing existing. And so you've kind of found a balance point between the necessary and then the stuff that really warms it up and makes it feel more like a home or a place humans want to hang out.
It could be replaced.
It could be replaced, yeah. And so maybe there's like the caretaker on site is, there's always like a screen project going in the background. And then when you have to do something else, you do it. Then you're working on the next little screen replacement. And I don't want to put more maintenance on the FCAT team, but sometimes little projects like that give us, sometimes there's inefficiencies in the system that create microeconomies in ways that can be really useful to a place. Like sometimes efficiency goes against sustainable being in the like I think economies thrive on these little inefficiencies that create jobs and create moments for art or opportunity. And so what I like about this proposal is that you're doing that, you're creating that space. And I think that what I imagine is that it's a small enough unit that you could devise like a shopping list. Like you need exactly 2 trusses from this store, and it gets small enough that you could package this. Like it could come out on a truck, and you could have all the stuff you need, or you could have a crew that's building 20 platforms, and 2 of them get built out fully the first year, and then the rest of them get built out incrementally over time. And so there's something really alluring or appealing about that kind of built-in phasing that you've designed, and about the kit apartsiness of it. So I think that's great. To me, the next step is like actually figuring out, okay, where is there? I know one of the restaurants that we stopped at on the way in had these large open web truss sort of structures. Like, where did they get those from? Let's find out exactly where people are sourcing things from, and how could you, like, we could come up with a cut sheet and pricing list and test the carbon neutrality of each of these material choices versus, like, I don't know, like, I think you could do a lot once you start to get that specific. And if there's a kit of parts and sometimes they're alone in the woods and sometimes they group together. Like to Jordan's question earlier, maybe there's a version of this near the path where there's 3 of these pods smashed together and that's where the women prefer to live. And then maybe, I don't know, I don't want to be too gendered about this, but like maybe there's some people that are like, I want to be in the woods with the snakes all night. And then they can go do that. But what am I saying? I think there's an efficiency built into this system that could be great and could aggregate or could be sparse and scattered out. And it's okay, it works both ways.
I think we were joking earlier about the truss going through the street, which is kind of a crazy. Couldn't even tell how you had done it. But speaking of, I like that you're praising the complexity in some ways and like the little details that make it more. But there is a thing about efficiency, right? Especially for these units, whether it's flat pack, especially if you want to build them far from sites hard enough to get to. Imagine that plus, you know, the hike that you guys took, like building it at the end of that hike. So all that to say, I think like having those 2 panels meet and the trusses between them or something, I think there's little efficiencies. It looks like there's a lot of pieces and parts here that could potentially be systematized down in some way so that it's a little bit simpler to build. Or this is, you know, A1 model and like A2 is a little simpler. That's the one that gets built more remotely. But yeah, a complexity like that, especially if there's something that is designed to be replaced in 10 years, 5 years, whatever, there's no reason to like integrate 2 systems, the core and the adornment in a way that makes it difficult to do that.
Before we go, Ellie, Eileen, Luis, do you have also maybe just larger or broader questions, or if you want to say anything to the group, because this is the last group, and then we're going to also end and summarize. But otherwise, do you have any other message maybe for the group?
Yeah, thanks, Edson. And you know, just personally for me, is the last thing that I want to say. Thank you so much for everything. Your big effort and great job that everyone do it here. It is as a result, you know, that these are wonderful presentations and wonderful ideas put together, and it will be really useful for us. And I hope the next steps are try to find, you know, some money to buildings. So now I hope one day you can see it is a reality that we are really sure that will happen. Yeah, and I really appreciate all the effort that everyone's, you know, including teachers and everyone that they do it possible these things. And of course, I wish the best to the students, and you are awesome and do it great and the smart ideas.
And Luis also, Eileen, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Now, I just want to add that we are very happy that you could be at the station field and see in vivo how all the structures are and the needs that the efecateros have there, and be able to see how the environment is and how well your designs now are be part of this big project that we have. So we are very grateful, and we really enjoy everything you have done until now, and in the future, perhaps we can still work together and make this a reality. Thank you.
This is Anne, and we will be in, Nick and I will be in touch in a few weeks, and so we'll be following up to figure out next steps, just so you all know.
Ellie, you were gonna say something.
Yes, I also want to thank all of you to develop all these designs. Well, I don't know very much about architecture, but I do know what are our necessities. So I think you have the chance to talk with all the FCAteros and know to be involved with their reality. So I am pretty sure that you have covered all their requirements, and I thank you very much for this, and I hope you can come and see what you have done when all of this is a reality. And yes, always welcome, and thank you very much for your work.
Thank you, Louise, Eileen, Ellie. Tom, you have one?
Yeah.
Wrap it up.
Wrap it up.
So before we say goodbye, I just want to thank you for being here, and especially for our friends at FCAT. I know you're really busy. And I'd like to share some of the wisdom that we've gained. And those are that problems tend to have more natural solutions than one might think, and the importance of site and experiential context. That FCAT clearly makes a point of connecting with the surrounding local communities, the significance of gaining firsthand experience with the site and its uses, that constant communication is essential, and finally, the importance of focusing on achievable sustainability goals. And I will leave you with this final slide showing our master plan and open the floor to any final general questions for us or conversations that will be had. And thanks again for being here, guys.
Yay.
Kind of happy.
I'm wondering, how many of y'all are here next year? So I know a lot of people graduate. I don't live here.
Yeah.
Around. So I feel like there's an important moment of knowledge transfer. Like, of course, the next group will have the folks at FCAT to talk with, and that's pivotal. But also having some moment of knowledge transfer where those of you who are still in town come give a little lecture at the beginning of the semester or something like that. That would be huge, so that the next crew doesn't have to learn all the things you guys learned the long way, but they can learn it the short way. So if you could give us your time, it's not next fall, it'll probably be next spring. That would be super useful. And I'm wondering if there's things, if anybody's got stuff in mind, like things I wish I knew in the first few weeks that it took me a while to figure out. I mean, I think that list was a great start, but is there anything that would help you out if you knew it right off the bat?
I mean, the topography of the site.
Yeah. I mean, do we even know it's still?
We're working on. We're talking about who can help us maybe get.
We need some kind of topo drones.
And there's Louise, I'm pointing at you and I'm sitting there and yeah.
So do the trees interfere? It's like,
yeah. So we just have to we have to pay maybe. We're gonna
figure some LiDAR scanners.
And someone's already committed, right, to like being a part of the FCAT when we have to talk about it. Someone can be like, you are going to recognize what it looks like when you go here. Right, someone's gonna be the.
Are you saying goodbye?
Yes.
Bye, guys.
Thank you, Louise. Thank you, Ellie.
Yeah, it's over.
Thank you, everyone, too.
Thank you.
Nice to see you, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, good to see
See you
everyone.
soon.